The emergency beacon screamed across 3 star systems, its desperate signal cutting through the cosmic void like a knife through darkness. On the colony world of Kepler 442b, Administrator Zephyr Kane watched the red warning lights flash across her command center's main display. The numbers were devastating. 12 million colonists, food supplies depleted, water recycling systems failing. 48 hours before complete societal collapse, Zephyr's 4 arms moved frantically across the holographic interface, her chitinous fingers clicking against the light projections. As a Vex's tie, she had been chosen to oversee this remote human settlement precisely because her species excelled at crisis management. The irony was not lost on her now. The colony had been humanity's most ambitious project yet. Terraforming a world from scratch, building cities that stretched toward alien skies, creating a new home for millions of Earth's children. For 15 years, it had been a shining example of human determination and ingenuity, until the solar flares began. The star Kepler 442 had entered an unexpected period of violent activity. Massive electromagnetic pulses had fried the orbital manufacturing stations, destroyed the supply ships in transit, and knocked out most of the colony's advanced technology. What remained was a population stranded on a world still decades away from true self-sufficiency. Administrator Kine, came the voice of Dr. Sarah Chen, the colony's chief medical officer. Her face appeared on the secondary display, exhaustion etched into every line. The protein synthesis labs are completely offline. We're looking at widespread malnutrition starting tomorrow if we don't get supplies soon. Zephyr's mandibles clicked in frustration. Status of the distress beacon? Broadcasting on all frequencies. The Galactic Aid Commission should have received it by now. The Galactic Aid Commission was the galaxy's premier humanitarian organization, a coalition of peaceful species dedicated to providing emergency relief during disasters. Their response teams were legendary for their efficiency and compassion. Medical supplies, food synthesizers, temporary housing generators, all delivered by ships painted bright white with the universal symbol of aid. Zephyr had worked with GAC before. During the Rigel Prime Plague outbreak, their ships had saved 4 billion lives. When the asteroid swarm devastated the Centauri colonies, GAC vessels had evacuated entire populations. They were exactly what Kepler 442b needed right now. How long until they arrive? Dr. Chen asked. Standard GAC response time is 18 to 36 hours for a Class 1 emergency, Zephyr replied, her voice carrying more confidence than she felt. We just need to hold on. Across the colony's sprawling districts, the situation grew more dire by the hour. In Sector 7, engineer Marcus Rodriguez jury-rigged water purification systems from spare parts and desperation. The improvised filters could handle perhaps a tenth of the population's needs. In the agricultural zones, botanist Elena Vasquez watched helplessly as the last of the hydroponic gardens withered without proper nutrient feeds. The children were the worst part. In the emergency shelters, thousands of young faces looked up at their parents with trust that was becoming harder to justify with each passing hour. The adults smiled and told them everything would be okay. That help was coming soon. But in the corridors outside, those same adults whispered about rationing, about hard choices, about the unthinkable. Commander Jake Harrison stood on the observation deck of Residential Tower 12, watching the alien sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. As the colony's head of security, he had been preparing for the worst-case scenarios. Riot control protocols, emergency rationing enforcement, the maintenance of order as civilization began to fray. His communicator crackled to life. Commander Harrison, this is Control. We're detecting ships approaching the outer system. Jake's heart leaped. GAC vessels? Negative, sir. The signatures are unusual. They're big. Really big. Jake frowned. GAC relief ships were typically mid-sized vessels, designed for quick deployment and efficient distribution of supplies. He made his way quickly to the central command center, where Zephyr was already studying the incoming sensor data. The ships were indeed massive. Dreadnought-class vessels, each one easily 10 times the size of a typical relief ship. Their hulls were dark, gray, angular, built for intimidation. rather than mercy. Most unsettling of all, they bore the insignia of the Terran Defense Force. "Those aren't humanitarian ships," Dr. Chen observed, her voice tight with worry. Zephyr's compound eyes studied the display. In all her years of crisis management, she had never seen warships respond to a civilian emergency. The Terran Defense Force was humanity's military arm, responsible for protecting human space from external threats and maintaining security along the frontier. They were soldiers, not relief workers. Why would Earth send warships? Jake wondered aloud. "We need medical supplies and food synthesizers, not plasma cannons and missile batteries." The lead vessel, a massive battlecruiser designated TDF Indomitable, hailed the colony directly. The face that appeared on the main screen was weathered and scarred, belonging to a man who had clearly seen decades of combat. Admiral Rebecca Stone's reputation preceded her. She was known throughout human space as the Iron Lady, a commander who had never lost a battle and never left a human settlement undefended. Kepler 442b Colony. This is Admiral Stone of the Terran Defense Force. We received your distress call. My fleet stands ready to provide immediate assistance. Zephyr stepped forward, her confusion evident. Admiral Stone, while we appreciate your response, we were expecting humanitarian aid vessels. Our colony requires medical supplies, food, and technical equipment, not military intervention. Admiral Stone's expression remained stoic. Administrator Kane, I understand your confusion. However, I assure you that my ships are fully equipped to handle your current crisis. We carry enough supplies to sustain your population for 6 months while permanent solutions are implemented. But Admiral, Dr. Chen interjected, your vessels are warships. Surely the Galactic Aid Commission would be better suited to. The GAC response has been delayed. Admiral Stone cut her off. Political complications in the Galactic Senate. Something about human expansion protocols and territorial disputes. My fleet was the nearest available asset capable of mounting an immediate relief operation. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Political complications. The galaxy's various species had been growing increasingly wary of human expansion into previously unclaimed sectors. What had started as subtle diplomatic pressure was apparently escalating into something more serious. Commander Harrison felt a chill run down his spine. Admiral, are you saying that the GAC is deliberately delaying aid to our colony? I'm saying that help is here now, Commander. My ships carry medical bays that rival the finest hospitals in the galaxy. Our fabrication units can produce food, water, and essential supplies in quantities sufficient for your entire population. The only question is whether you'll accept our assistance. Zephyr looked at the assembled department heads. 12 million lives hung in the balance. Outside, the alien sun was setting. And with it, their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. The choice seemed obvious, yet something about the situation felt fundamentally wrong. Admiral Stone, Zephyr said carefully, we gratefully accept your assistance. However, I must ask about the nature of your response. Why did Earth dispatch a military fleet rather than civilian relief ships? Admiral Stone's smile was grim. Administrator Kine, you asked for help. You didn't specify what kind of help you were willing to accept. As it turns out, the galaxy has some very strong opinions about human expansion. They were hoping to use your crisis as a teaching moment. The implications hit the command center like a physical blow. The GAC wasn't delayed. They were making a point. 12 million human lives were being held hostage to galactic politics, a demonstration of what happened when humanity pushed too far, too fast into space, that other species considered their sphere of influence. Prepare for orbital insertion, Admiral Stone commanded. All relief operations will commence within the hour. And Administrator Kane? You might want to prepare your people for some unexpected guests. It seems, word of your situation has reached some very interested parties. As the TDF fleet took up positions above the colony, sensor alerts began chiming across the command center. New ships were entering the system. Lots of them. The distinctive, sleek designs of Altarian cruisers, the crystalline structures of Zenthak vessels, the bioships of the Kylix Confederation. Within minutes, representatives from a dozen different species had arrived in the Kepler 442 system. Zephyr's mandibles clicked rapidly as she processed the situation. This wasn't a humanitarian crisis anymore. This was a political powder keg, with 12 million human colonists sitting directly on top of the fuse. The galaxy had come to watch what humanity would do when cornered, when their own people faced starvation, while alien bureaucrats played games with their lives. Commander Harrison activated the colony-wide communication system. All civilians report to designated shelters immediately. This is not a drill. All security personnel report to Condition Yellow. This is not a drill. As the massive TDF warships began their descent toward the planet's surface, Administrator Zephyr Kane realized that their crisis had just become something much larger. The colony had called for help and received it, but the price of that help was about to reshape the balance of power in their entire sector of the galaxy. The aliens had expected to teach humanity a lesson about overreach and expansion. They had anticipated watching human colonists suffer while their relief ships sat idle, waiting for the proper diplomatic channels to slowly, bureaucratically resolve the situation. Instead, they now faced something they hadn't prepared for. 12 million humans, with nothing left to lose, backed by the most powerful military force in known space, and a growing understanding that their survival was being used as a bargaining chip in galactic politics. The relief had arrived, but it came with teeth, claws, and enough firepower to glass an entire world. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about what happened when you threatened human civilians and expected humanity to simply accept it. As the first TDF shuttles touched down in the colony's main plaza, their hulls still glowing from atmospheric entry, Admiral Stone's words echoed in Zephyr's mind. The aliens had come expecting a teaching moment. They were about to get one. Just not the kind they had planned for. The humanitarian crisis was over. What came next would depend entirely on whether the galaxy was willing to learn from its mistakes, or if they would double down on their attempt to use human suffering as a political weapon. Either way, the age of humanity quietly accepting galactic manipulation was about to come to a very definitive end. The TDF relief operations began with mechanical precision that put galactic aid organizations to shame. Within 3 hours of planetfall, massive fabrication units were humming to life across the colony's major population centers. The warships that had seemed so ominous from orbit transformed into the most efficient humanitarian operation Zephyr had ever witnessed. Admiral Stone stood in the colony's main command center, her uniform somehow remaining crisp despite the chaos of the relief effort. Around her, Terran Defense Force personnel worked alongside civilian administrators with the smooth coordination of a well-rehearsed symphony. Medical supplies flowed from orbital cargo bays. Water purification plants came online faster than anyone thought possible. Food synthesizers began producing meals for 12 million people. Your fabrication technology is remarkable, Dr. Chen observed, watching the data streams on her medical displays. These supplies are beyond GAC standard specifications. Admiral Stone's expression remained neutral. Military-grade equipment tends to be more robust than civilian alternatives. We've learned to be self-sufficient during extended deployments. What she didn't say was equally revealing. The TDF ships carried enough manufacturing capacity to supply a population twice the size of Kepler 442b for over a year. These weren't just warships, they were mobile colonies, designed to establish and maintain human presence in the most hostile environments imaginable. Commander Harrison coordinated security from the tactical center, but his attention was increasingly drawn to the orbital displays. The alien fleet had grown substantially. 17 different species now had vessels positioned throughout the system, all claiming to be monitoring the situation for their respective governments. Admiral, Harrison reported, the alien observers are maintaining their distance, but they're definitely recording everything. The Altarian cruiser has been running intensive sensor sweeps of our fabrication operations. Let them look, Admiral Stone replied. Transparency builds trust. Dr. Sarah Chen frowned. Admiral, forgive my directness, but your response seems remarkably well prepared for what was supposed to be an emergency deployment. How did the TDF mobilize this level of resources so quickly? Admiral Stone paused her review of logistics reports. Dr. Chen, the Terran Defense Force has been monitoring galactic political tensions for some time. When human colonies began reporting increasing difficulty obtaining aid during emergencies, we developed contingency protocols. Your distress call triggered Operation Samaritan. Operation Samaritan? Zephyr's compound eyes focused sharply on the Admiral. A standing fleet specifically equipped for humanitarian intervention when traditional channels fail. This isn't our first deployment, Administrator Kane. It's simply the largest and most visible. The implications sent ripples of shock through the command center. The TDF had been conducting clandestine humanitarian operations throughout human space, effectively replacing the GAC when political interference delayed critical aid. The galaxy's attempt to pressure humanity through humanitarian manipulation had been quietly countered for months, possibly years. In the colony's residential sectors, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Marcus Rodriguez, the engineer who had been jerry-rigging water filters 12 hours earlier, now stood before a TDF fabrication unit that was producing purified water faster than the colony could distribute it. The machine was the size of a small building, its crystalline structures humming with energy that seemed almost alive. This technology, Marcus muttered to his assistant. It's at least 50 years ahead of anything I've seen in civilian applications. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Walsh overheard the comment. She was a young TDF engineer, probably in her early 30s, with the kind of confidence that came from working with equipment that regularly performed the impossible. Actually, it's about 15 years ahead of current galactic standards. We've had some breakthroughs in matter conversion efficiency. Breakthroughs that the galaxy doesn't know about? Walsh's smile was carefully diplomatic. The TDF believes in maintaining certain technological advantages. For purely defensive purposes, of course. Meanwhile, in the medical centers, Dr. Chen was discovering exactly what those technological advantages meant in practical terms. The TDF medical bays weren't just healing the colony's sick and injured. They were diagnosing and treating conditions that wouldn't be discovered by conventional medicine for days or weeks. Genetic therapies that reversed radiation damage from the solar flares. Neural interface technology that allowed direct communication with patients in comas. Dr. Chen, called out Dr. Maria Santos, one of the TDF medical officers. We've completed the colony-wide health assessment. Every resident has been screened, treated, and cleared. We've also taken the liberty of implementing some preventive measures against potential future complications from prolonged radiation exposure. Dr. Chen stared at the data streams. You've medically treated 12 million people in 6 hours? Our equipment operates at a significantly accelerated pace compared to civilian medical technology. We've also identified 17 colonists with previously undiagnosed genetic conditions that would have proven fatal within the next 5 years. Treatment has been initiated. The scope of the operation was staggering. This wasn't emergency relief. This was a complete overhaul of the colony's entire infrastructure, medical system, and resource production capability. The TDF wasn't just solving their immediate crisis, they were ensuring it could never happen again. Above orbit, the alien observers were coming to the same conclusion. Ambassador Vex Hal of the Altarian Republic watched the sensor readings with growing alarm. The human ships weren't just delivering supplies, they were fundamentally upgrading every aspect of the colony's technology base. Communications officer, Vex Hal commanded. Establish contact with the other observer vessels. I believe we need to discuss what we're witnessing. The emergency conference that followed included representatives from 12 different species, each more concerned than the last about what they were seeing. The Kylix Confederation's bioships had detected energy signatures suggesting matter conversion technology decades beyond current galactic understanding. The Zenthak crystalline vessels reported manufacturing processes that violated several supposedly fundamental laws of physics. The humans appear to have been concealing significant technological capabilities, observed Commander Threshak of the Altarian fleet. Their relief operations demonstrate industrial capacity that rivals our homeworld's manufacturing centers. More concerning, added Hive Speaker Zeeks of the Kylix Confederation. Their medical technology is identifying and treating conditions our best physicians couldn't diagnose. How long have they possessed such capabilities? The question hung in the void between ships like a dangerous secret finally exposed. For decades, Humanity had been treated as the newcomers to galactic civilization, the young species still learning how to properly integrate with established powers. Their colonies had been seen as ambitious but ultimately dependent on galactic infrastructure and goodwill. What they were witnessing on Kepler 442b suggested something entirely different. Humanity had been quietly developing advanced technologies while allowing the galaxy to underestimate their true capabilities. The humanitarian crisis hadn't revealed human weakness. It had revealed human strength that had been carefully concealed. Back on the planet's surface, Administrator Zephyr was beginning to understand the larger implications of what was happening. Admiral Stone had been remarkably transparent about the TDF's capabilities, but there were questions that needed answers. "Admiral Stone," Zephyr said during a brief lull in the relief coordination, "I need to ask you something directly. How long has humanity been capable of this level of technological response?" Admiral Stone considered the question carefully. "Administrator Kane, humanity learned very early in our galactic integration that being perceived as weak or dependent could be dangerous. We've spent the last 30 years quietly ensuring that we would never again be vulnerable to political manipulation disguised as humanitarian concern. You're saying this was planned? All of it? I'm saying that we hoped it would never be necessary. The galactic community's decision to delay aid to your colony forced our hand. They wanted to teach us about consequences. We're teaching them about preparation." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Commander Harrison. "Admiral, Administrator Kane, you need to see this immediately. The alien observer fleet is moving." In the command center, the orbital display showed a coordination of alien vessels that looked suspiciously like a military formation. 17 ships, representing 12 different species, all moving to establish what could charitably be called a blockade formation around the planet. "Communications incoming," reported the duty officer. "Ambassador Vexhal of the Altarian Republic is requesting immediate conference with colonial leadership and Admiral Stone." The holographic projection that appeared in the center of the command room showed not just Ambassador Vexhal, but representatives from all 12 alien species. Their expressions ranged from concerned to openly hostile. "Administrator Kane, Admiral Stone," Ambassador Vexhal began, "we must express our deep concern about the nature of the relief operation currently underway on Kepler 442b. Our observations suggest that humanity has been concealing significant technological capabilities that may violate several galactic treaties regarding technological disclosure and colonial development restrictions." Admiral Stone stepped forward, her bearing shifting subtly from relief coordinator to military commander. "Ambassador Vexhal, I'm not familiar with any galactic treaties that require member species to reveal the full extent of their technological capabilities to other governments. Perhaps you could cite the specific regulations you believe we're violating?" The silence that followed was telling. There were no such regulations, and everyone in the conversation knew it. The galactic community had operated on assumptions about human capabilities, assumptions that were now being revealed as dangerously inaccurate. "Furthermore," Admiral Stone continued, "I find it curious that 12 species have mobilized military assets to observe a humanitarian relief operation. One might wonder what intentions motivate such a response." Ambassador Vexhal's composure cracked slightly. "Admiral Stone, the galactic community has a legitimate interest in ensuring that colony worlds receive appropriate assistance during emergencies. What we're observing appears to exceed reasonable relief parameters." "You mean you're upset that we're too effective at helping our own people?" The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. 12 million human civilians had been facing starvation and death, while galactic bureaucrats played political games with their lives. When humanity responded with overwhelming force and capability to save those civilians, those same bureaucrats were now complaining about the scope of the rescue operation. Dr. Chen stepped into the conversation, her medical officer's uniform giving her words additional weight. "Ambassadors, in the last 8 hours, my people have gone from facing imminent death to receiving medical care that exceeds the best facilities on most galactic core worlds. If your concern is about the quality of assistance we're receiving, I can assure you that every human colonist on this world is grateful for Admiral Stone's intervention." Commander Harrison added his perspective from the security standpoint. "The TDF relief operation has proceeded with complete transparency. All observers have been welcome to monitor our activities, If you have concerns about specific technologies or procedures, perhaps you should request technical briefings rather than surrounding our world with warships. The alien representatives exchanged glances that spoke of emergency consultations happening on encrypted channels. What had begun as an opportunity to pressure humanity through humanitarian crisis had become a demonstration of exactly why such pressure was ineffective and potentially dangerous. Ambassador Vex Hall made one final attempt to regain control of the situation. Admiral Stone. The galactic community requests that human expansion in this sector be temporarily halted while we establish proper protocols for colonial emergency response. Admiral Stone's smile was cold as space itself. Ambassador. The galactic community had its chance to establish proper protocols. You chose political manipulation over humanitarian assistance. Now you'll live with the consequences of that choice. We're prepared to enforce this request if necessary. The threat was clear, but Admiral Stone's response was even clearer. Ambassador. You're welcome to try. However, I should mention that my relief fleet consists of 17 Dreadnought-class vessels, each capable of taking on your entire combined observation force. We came here to save lives. We're prepared to defend them if necessary. The alien fleet found itself facing a choice they hadn't anticipated. They had expected to pressure a helpless human colony backed by distant and ineffective Earth authorities. Instead, they were confronting a military force that had revealed capabilities far beyond anything they had prepared for. Protecting civilians they had deliberately left to suffer. As the standoff continued above Kepler 442b, one thing became perfectly clear to every observer in the system. The galaxy's understanding of humanity's place in galactic politics had just been fundamentally and permanently altered. The species they had treated as newcomers and dependents had revealed themselves to be something much more dangerous. They were competitors. The standoff lasted exactly 47 minutes before the first alien vessel broke formation and departed the system. The Thorian Trade Confederation ship simply activated its quantum drives and vanished, unwilling to risk a confrontation over what their government now recognized as a losing proposition. Within an hour, 6 more vessels had quietly withdrawn, their ambassadors suddenly discovering urgent business elsewhere in the galaxy. Admiral Stone watched the tactical display with satisfaction that she was careful not to show. The TDF had contingency plans for this scenario, but she had hoped it wouldn't come to this. Revealing humanity's true technological capabilities would fundamentally alter the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy, possibly triggering larger conflicts down the line. Admiral, Commander Harrison reported from the tactical station. 5 alien vessels remain in system. The Altarian flagship, 2 Zenthak crystalline ships, and a pair of Kylix bio-cruisers. They're maintaining distance, but haven't withdrawn. The stubborn ones, Admiral Stone observed. They're trying to determine exactly what they're dealing with before reporting back to their governments. Dr. Chen approached from the Medical Coordination Center, tablet in hand. Admiral, I have the final medical report on the colony population. Every resident has been treated, healed, and cleared. We've also completed genetic therapy protocols that should provide immunity to the specific radiation signature from this system's solar flares. Even if Kepler 442 experiences similar stellar activity in the future, the colonists will be protected. Admiral Stone nodded approvingly. Excellent work, Doctor. What about the infrastructure improvements? Engineering reports that all primary systems have been upgraded to TDF military specifications. The colony can now sustain twice its current population indefinitely without external support. Water recycling efficiency has increased by 400%. Food production capacity has tripled. Power generation is operating at 15 times previous levels. Administrator Zephyr joined the conversation, her forearms gesturing animatedly. Admiral Stone, I must say that what your people have accomplished in 12 hours exceeds what we had hoped to achieve in 12 years of development. This isn't just relief. You've transformed our entire world. Standard procedure for Operation Samaritan, Admiral Stone replied matter-of-factly. We don't just solve immediate problems. We eliminate the vulnerabilities that created those problems in the first place. The implications were staggering. Every human colony that had experienced a humanitarian crisis hadn't just been rescued. They had been upgraded, fortified, and made independent of galactic supply chains and infrastructure. What the galaxy had perceived as scattered, vulnerable settlements were actually becoming self-sufficient bastions of human technology and capability. "How many operations like this have you conducted?" Zephyr asked quietly. Kepler 442b is the 37th colony to receive Samaritan assistance. Each deployment has been a learning experience, allowing us to refine our procedures and technology. 37 colonies, 37 worlds that the galactic community thought they understood, now revealed as significantly more advanced and capable than anyone had suspected. The political implications were enormous. Lieutenant Commander Walsh approached from the Fabrication Oversight Station. "Admiral, we've completed installation of the defensive grid satellites. The colony now has orbital protection equivalent to a core world military installation. Any future interference with relief supplies will be discouraged." "Defensive grid satellites?" Commander Harrison's eyebrows rose. "Admiral, those weren't on the original relief manifest." Admiral Stone's expression remained carefully neutral. "Commander, threats to civilian populations require comprehensive responses. The satellite network will ensure that Kepler 442b never again faces artificial shortages due to political manipulation." Translation: any attempt by alien governments to blockade or restrict access to the colony would now face military-grade orbital defenses. The humanitarian crisis had become a fortress establishment, and the galaxy's most troublesome political tool had just been permanently removed from their arsenal. On the bridge of the Altarian flagship, Ambassador Vexhal was reaching similar conclusions. His tactical analysis team had been monitoring the human relief operation since its beginning, and their reports painted a disturbing picture. "Ambassador," reported his chief military advisor, "the human vessels have deployed enough equipment to establish a major military installation. Their fabrication technology appears capable of producing advanced weaponry and defensive systems in addition to civilian supplies. Are you suggesting that this relief operation is actually a military expansion disguised as humanitarian aid?" "I'm suggesting that the humans have developed technologies that make the distinction irrelevant. Any human colony can apparently be converted into a fortress within hours of receiving TDF assistance." Ambassador Vexhal studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. The human colonists weren't just saved, they were now protected by defensive systems that would give his own fleet serious problems in a direct confrontation. Worse, the humans had established this capability under the banner of humanitarian assistance, making any protest appear petty and vindictive. "Communications," he ordered. "Establish contact with the other remaining vessels. We need to coordinate our response to this situation." The conference that followed included the most experienced military commanders and diplomats from 3 major galactic powers. What they had discovered about human capabilities was reshaping everything they thought they knew about the balance of power in their region of space. "The humans have been conducting a deception operation for decades," concluded Hive Speaker Zix of the Helix Confederation. "They allowed us to believe they were dependent on galactic infrastructure while secretly developing autonomous capabilities that exceed our own." Commander Threshak of the Zenthak Empire agreed. "Their relief ships are essentially mobile industrial complexes capable of establishing independent colonies overnight. If they have 37 such installations, they represent a significant military force disguised as civilian settlements. The question," Ambassador Vexhal observed, "is what we do with this information. Do we report this as a threat to galactic security? Or do we acknowledge that we fundamentally misunderstood the nature of human expansion?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Stone herself requested a direct communication with the remaining alien vessels. "Ambassadors," Admiral Stone began when the connection was established, "I believe we need to have a frank discussion about what you've observed here today." "Admiral Stone," Ambassador Vexhal replied, "we're prepared to listen. The galactic community made a choice 12 hours ago. When Kepler 442b called for help, you chose political manipulation over humanitarian assistance. You decided that 12 million human civilians were acceptable casualties in your attempt to control human expansion. The accusation hung between the ships like a weapon pointed at the heart of galactic civilization. No one could deny it. The GAC had the resources to respond to the colony's crisis, but had been deliberately delayed by political considerations. That choice had consequences. Admiral Stone continued. You've now seen what humanity does when our civilians are threatened, and traditional aid channels fail. We don't accept casualties. We eliminate vulnerabilities. We ensure that such situations cannot occur again. And if the galactic community objects to your methods? Ambassador Vexal asked. Admiral Stone's smile was visible even over the holographic connection. Ambassador, you're welcome to object. However, I should point out that 37 human colonies now possess defensive capabilities equivalent to military installations. They're self-sufficient, well-protected, and entirely independent of galactic supply chains that can be manipulated for political purposes. 1. You're threatening us? I'm informing you. The era of using humanitarian crises as political weapons against human colonies is over. Any attempt to recreate today's situation will be met with an overwhelming response that makes today's operation look like a gentle suggestion. Commander Threshock leaned forward in his crystalline chamber. Admiral Stone, your government cannot simply ignore galactic law and diplomatic protocols. Commander, my government has operated within every applicable law and protocol. We responded to a humanitarian crisis when traditional aid was deliberately withheld. We provided assistance to our own civilians using our own resources. We've been completely transparent about our activities and capabilities. You've established military installations throughout this sector. We've upgraded civilian infrastructure to prevent future humanitarian crises. If that infrastructure happens to be militarily significant, perhaps the galactic community should have considered that possibility before choosing to manipulate civilian suffering for political gain. Dr. Chen watched the exchange from the colony's command center and felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. Admiral Stone was systematically dismantling 30 years of galactic political assumptions about humanity's place in the universe. The consequences would be enormous. Admiral, Dr. Chen said during a brief lull in the conversation, what happens next? How does the galaxy respond to this? That depends entirely on whether they're willing to learn from today's lesson, Admiral Stone replied. We've demonstrated that humanitarian manipulation doesn't work against humanity. We've shown that we possess the technological and military capabilities to protect our civilians regardless of galactic political games. Now the galaxy needs to decide how they want to proceed. Commander Harrison studied the tactical displays. Admiral, I'm seeing movement from the remaining alien vessels. They appear to be preparing for departure. Ambassador Vexhal's voice confirmed the observation. Admiral Stone, we will be reporting these events to our respective governments. This conversation is far from over. I'm counting on it, Ambassador. The galaxy needs to understand that the old rules have changed. Humanity will not accept casualties for the sake of alien political convenience. Our civilians will be protected. Our colonies will be defended. Our technology will continue to advance. And if the galaxy objects, Admiral Stone's final words carried the weight of 17 Dreadnought-class vessels and 37 fortified human colonies. Then the galaxy will learn what it means to be on the wrong side of human determination. As the alien vessels departed the Kepler 442 system, they carried with them the knowledge that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Humanity hadn't just saved 12 million colonists from a humanitarian crisis. They had revealed themselves to be a power that could no longer be manipulated, pressured, or controlled through traditional diplomatic channels. The galaxy had expected to teach humanity a lesson about consequences and limitations. Instead, they had learned that humanity had spent 30 years preparing for exactly this moment. The species they had treated as newcomers and dependents had revealed themselves to be technological and military equals who were no longer willing to accept vulnerability as the price of galactic citizenship. On Kepler 442b, 12 million humans went to sleep that night in comfortable beds, with full stomachs, in climate-controlled homes, protected by defensive systems that would make core world military commanders envious. They had called for help and received it, but the help had come with a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was done asking permission to protect its own people. They were done accepting manipulation disguised as diplomacy. They were done being treated as anything less than equals in a galaxy that had just learned what equality with humans actually meant. The humanitarian crisis was over, but the revolution in galactic politics had just begun.